everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Max Rounds 30 podcast, where there is actually sometimes overtime. I literally can't use that intro line anymore. So we're joined today by Note from HL TV, Jeff from Dust2US, and myself from Challenger Mode and Rushby Media. And in 30 minutes, or maybe more, we'll see, we'll be covering all of this week's North American Counter-Strike content. So before I start talking, I'm going to hit the timer. 30 minutes on the clock, and here we go. So the first thing I want to do is just give a quick shit out. Wow, all right, good start. Give a quick shout out to the Fragadelphia / Nerdstreet folk for the Denver Frag. I was there this last weekend. It was an amazing time. The local host staff were all amazing. They were all super nice. It was just genuinely like a really awesome experience, and despite, everything that we've had to go through, to enjoy it, they were just, they were on top of everything, and it was just an awesome time. So big shout out to all of them, and they were very accommodating. So big thanks. All right, so here's the thing, Jeff. I hear you've got some fantastic news for us. We'd love to hear. I'm gonna hand this off to you. This is for you. All right.
Long have I waited. North American CS:GO no longer debated. That's right, you stupid bastards. You thought you could get away with it. At long last, the ESIC report has finally come out for three players. And finally, Retchy, Fourpack, and Noserack have finally been found guilty by the court of law. And at long last, we'll never see Retchy and Fourpack ever again. I couldn't be happier.
Isn't the ban, is it 10 years?
5 years.
Which is literally which is like 100 years.
That's true. In CS
5 years ago
terms.
was like the fall of Rome in NACS.
So close enough.
Close enough. I mean, of course, I think I mentioned this somewhere. I'm still, everyone's still waiting for the real ESIC report to come out. But from what ESIC's been saying, it might be another couple months, which, they couldn't find a more patient audience for it. But just the fact that finally 4.5 months after pushing the report about Retchy and Fourpack and Noserack, I'll never have to deal with that. I mean, I'll have to deal with Noserack again, unfortunately. But Retchy, Fourpack, good riddance. See you in hell.
Well, it does suck that this report's been dangling over North America for basically a year now. As of next month, it is a year since their initial report came out that they were even looking into it. So that's a little bit absurd. I get it now the FBI is involved, but it's just nuts that it's gonna take even longer for any of the other results to come out.
I mean, ultimately, beyond the excitement of having these 3 players banned, it is kind of disappointing that they are admitting there's 30 more players who are match fixers out in the scene, and they don't really have anything ready to share about them yet.
Yeah, and the other thing too is just and this is kind of funny because we circle back around because Carson was oh man, fake ban, whatever, right? Well, here's your real ban. It may be only 111 days or whatever, but this is a real ban, sir. You have been banned, even if it's up. You can't say that anymore. You can't. That's just not factually correct.
Choco check, more like Choco chumps. Am I right? Home of 2 formerly banned players.
Man.
Wait, Jacob, you didn't know that when you get incriminated and you're released on time served, that you didn't actually get convicted?
Wait, what?
That's not how that works?
I mean, him and Ogre have been awfully silent on Twitter since ESIC released the report. Apparently there's nothing really to say about the fact that he is objectively guilty of a violation of the ethics code.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of seem weird that that's only 111 days. I mean, okay, it doesn't seem weird. It is fucking weird that that's only 111 days that you I it's been a bit since I've read over it, and I feel like Jeff, you'll convey this a little bit better, but what are your thoughts on the 111 day ban for Carson?
Well, I think ESIC's whole crux of why he was banned for 111 days and not longer was because in the recording he only said one word. But you kind of have to be okay, well, you only said one word in a 2-minute recording. What else have you been talking about? So it's based on the evidence on the table, it makes sense. But surely you can just say, okay, we're ESL is a private company. Do we really want someone who we know is admitted to conspiring with match fixers and not not sending it into the proper authorities? I can't wait till they get an event till DreamHack opens September, and then all the casters have to do what they did for the last like 6 months with Nose Rack and Retchie, where they have to pretend that they're not match fixers. Like,
yeah, that's
match fixer fellow travelers were like, wow, Retchie with another miss. What a big shocker. Like,
and that's been like one of the tough things too, is like, you know, whenever like I've had to cast like Choco Check or whatever, you're just sitting there and you're like, well, this just fucking feels wrong, right? Like, it doesn't matter. You just know that's hanging over the team, and it's going to cloud everything. Like, and that's why it always blows my mind whenever they, like, you know, whenever they get upset about, you know, people thinking that they might be fixing a match or something. It's like, well, you've clearly shown that you have the ability to do this in the past. So
they're like, well,
yeah.
See, in reality, like we announced on social media, we have kicked Retchie, and therefore we are completely, our hands have been completely washed free of all sins that related to any match fixing. And now Choco Check is a perfectly legitimate project, of course. What a silly thing to suggest that, you know, that people who were on the team at the time of the recording and were into TeamSpeak with the players at the time of the recording have nothing to do with it, even though they just incidentally happened to not be on at that time. Like, what a weird thing to say.
One of the things that bugs me is the fact that, like, a lot of the other players will also just give them clemency for this sort of stuff. Like, even players that a lot of people in Valorant know were or allegedly were involved in match fixing, people are just on teams with them and continue letting it go on. Like, obviously you can't prosecute anything at that point, but just like, it just makes you wonder why it's so easy for a lot of these players to forgive and just allow it to happen and not actually have any blowback on it.
Well, some of these guys are like frothing at the mouth. Like, when I think it was when like the ESIC bans initially lapsed for like Nose Rack or something, like Moose was like, yeah, let's go fucking Nose Rack back in the game. It's like, have some fucking standards, man. Like, you know, he's a match fixer, and you know he like plays a match fixers. Like, can't you just like not tweet about it? Like,
yeah,
players in NA put like
your own brand, right? Like,
yeah,
that's all
players in
you're
NA
doing.
put like friendship like so far above like any other like above anything else, where it's like, you know, they'll defend their friends who are match fixers because they've been friends since like high school or whatever. And it's like, you're a professional Valorant player earning like five figures on like a tier 1 organization. Like, can't you just like not like think before you tweet? Like,
yeah. Well, is there anything else we'd like to say on this? Because we do have some other topics we'd like to cover.
I do, like, I guess I'll just say like thanks. This doesn't happen a lot, so I will say it. Like, I guess ESIC is finally making a step in the right direction with their transparency, like, notice board thing, which I know they've been kind of tooling around with for a long time. And I will say it's like a step in the right direction for them, because obviously they've kind of said outright, like, we're not going to have like a public PR person at like the forefront of the company. So for them to just be like, okay, this is our concession to that, we'll just have like a place where you can look to see what we've been up to in the past couple months, is good. I just hope we don't have to wait like another 6 months for the next chunk of bans to come out, because I mean, at the end of the day, they do say it's like 30 more players, so it is something. I mean, to be fair, I feel like most of those players probably aren't playing anymore, but it is just still like a sort of, you know, it still is just like it still continues just to hover over that NA scene.
Yeah, and you should also be able to set that precedent to say, hey, we will punish you if you do this, you know, like that should just be set in stone. So
yeah.
All right, so I guess our next topic, this is a note topic. We'll hand this off over to you, but we do have some issues with the Dreamhack Qual coming up here.
Yeah, I mean, the main event for Dreamhack's been announced for quite a while, for all of the regions, but even for South America, I've had managers of South American teams DMing me, asking me if I know the open qualifier or closed qualifier dates, because they didn't want that one to overlap with their own blast qualifier, which fortunately it didn't. But in North America, for some reason, that seemingly has happened, where we have our closed qualifier running from the 13th to the 16th, which was scheduled after Frag, I guess, but it does overlap with the blast qualifier, which is also going to be played by half the teams from Frag. And it just doesn't really make sense, because we've had basically 2 weeks after the player break where there's been almost no events happening. Even Premier only had, I think, 4 matches in the first week or something. And it just seems unreasonable not to use any of that time for any of the open qualifiers or closed qualifiers for these events and instead causing this overlap to happen when, for example, a closed qualifier could have been playing out on the same days as the current open qualifier dates.
Yeah. Yeah, it just blows my mind. Like it's literally a company that is almost competing with itself when it comes with ESL, running Dreamhack, and ESEA, working with Frag. It's like, how do these miscommunications happen to this degree?
Do you think yeah, do you think it's just like a lack of care on part of the NA scene from companies like ESL, that they don't consider it like a priority to have like a sit down meeting where they're like, hey, Blast, do you have any NA qualifiers running this weekend? Because surely this could have been easily resolved by them just having like hopping on a Skype call for like an hour and being like, okay, we'll take this week, you take this week, we'll take this week.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's as if they don't know, because as far as I know, I'm pretty sure there's like an internal doc that all of the big tournament organizers have have all of their events and qualifiers on there. The only thing I can possibly think of is the IEM fall qualifiers sort of changing the way that some events were scheduled, just because the RMR had to come in at some point in that calendar. But regardless, you still could have definitely hosted this on different days and not have caused it to overlap. The only thing I hope is that Blast or I guess Frag in this case, and Dreamhack / ESL allow teams to compete in both. It's not going to be easy, but surely some form of scheduling has to be done to allow for that, because it just seems unreasonable in a region where like opportunities to play internationally are already pretty sparse right now, that you would jeopardize teams' chance to be able to both play for bigger notoriety in one event and a spot in international LAN in the other. It just doesn't really make sense.
I just think they don't really care. Like I said, I just don't think they are really like that interested, because they don't. NA teams don't really bring the viewership. It doesn't really bring the the broadcast interest. So I think they're just kind of like, okay, we'll get who we'll get. If we get Extra Assault, they'll win one match. If we get Bad News Bears, they'll win one match. They'll go out in last place. So it doesn't really matter from our perspective if we make the qualifiers work, because it doesn't result in like a desirable end product for us.
Well, I also think that's a little bit of the crux of the issue, though, right? Because like the NA teams don't get this viewership because like it's like you only ever see them once in international events. They never have that opportunity to try and build up a fan base overseas, because they never have the opportunity to play overseas or play in international events. Like that's a cycle, right? And I also think that, I actually really hope now with Jackson, or El Jacko for those unaware, moving over and joining the team for the ESL Pro Tour, that NA will get a little bit more attention as a part of this whole product and the overall scheme of how these events are run. Because right now, like shit like this is just unacceptable, right? Like if that's how you kill off something that is part of your own product base, if you're ESL, right? Like this isn't good for your scene at all, right? So I don't know. It bothers the hell out of me too. So I really hope that with Jackson coming on, that'll make a big difference going forward.
Yeah, it's weird, and it just feels like something that like they can just be solved by better coordination, which is something they've promised to do in press releases for a while now, but it just hasn't really come to fruition.
Yeah. Do we have anything else on the Dreamhack overlap that we want to talk about?
Man, I'd like to see the announcements sooner than they were.
That's true.
That's about it. Like they definitely could have announced this over a month ago, I'm sure.
Well, that's definitely like that's always. I feel that's always been a Dreamhack issue. They always announce their qualifiers so late, which is like, I don't know. I don't know if once again that's like because Dreamhack isn't really a priority product in ESL anymore, because it definitely feels like conspiracy time that they're slowly winding down Dreamhack and they're just gonna have it be like maybe Yanshiping and that's it every year, because they've been sort of folding all the events into the Intel Extreme Masters brand. But for a while now, they've been announcing the qualifiers like only a couple weeks out, which is definitely weird.
Well, maybe, I mean, they'd definitely be only winding down like the CS event part of Dreamhack if they were doing that, I would think, considering Dreamhack is kind of, big outside of CS too, for the most part. So
I don't think they'd get rid of Dreamhack open stops though.
Yeah, I don't
even in CS, because before with their ESL Pro Tour circuit idea, it's sort of like a major part of that as well, where the winners of those events on LAN are supposed to qualify for larger events as well. So like I don't think that they're necessarily going to do away with that.
if
I mean, but
anything,
theoretically, you could just call them like IM Opens or
right.
something.
I feel like they might get a branding change at the most. Yeah. Well, I suppose then what we'll do is we'll move on to, I don't have a fancy like segment for this, like HLTV confirmed, but we'll go on to our roster moves. We've got ourselves actually some pretty spicy changes kind of coming up here. So I guess what we'll do is we'll start out with RBG. They have removed Klasia and they have removed Aura, and they have added Jitter and they've added Axed. These are interesting to say the least. And
yeah, interesting is a good word for it.
I'm conflicted. Like, cause I know for most part the reason why Klasia isn't on the team anymore, right? But also Aura, like the coaching change is what kind of is throwing me off, right?
Yeah, I'm with you there, honestly.
Well, apparently they said, like, you know, they told me that they wanted someone who was, like, more, like, passionate. So I don't know if that, you take that to mean that Aro was more of, like, I'm a pet kind of guy, where he's just, like, an analyst. He's, like, a booksman. Like, but he doesn't really, like, get you hyped in the server. And so, I mean, from that angle, the addition of Axe kind of makes sense. Because if anything that's Axe good at is just kind of, like, being like, a voice on the team.
The loud guy, yeah.
The loud, passionate, you know, on land, like the guy who's like, you know, punching the air and like giving you back rubs and stuff, like.
Yeah, I mean.
So I mean, from that perspective, I guess that makes sense, but.
Yeah, and like even then, like I'm not opposed to, like, if Jitter works better on the team, I think that's a great move, right? Because like obviously, like it didn't seem like Klasia was working out on RBG. Like they've been, as of recent, they've had some struggles with it, right? And it felt like he never reached the same kind of peaks that we saw on on say Secret Club or elsewhere. So, you know, we'll see where Klasia goes from here, but I think that Jitter is probably a good move for this team overall, but we'll just have to see how the coaches kind of span out.
Yeah, I think for me, the only thing is that the coaching change just doesn't feel like an RBG change.
Right.
Like another team it could apply to. RBG just always seemed like a more structured team that has a lot more focus on their development. I don't know how X will do with that. If they're bringing him in to be more of a hype man, then I'm not sure if that's like that. I guess maybe if that's what they're trying to pivot towards and they feel they don't need that backbone from the coaching side, at least, then maybe it could work out. It just doesn't seem like an
maybe
RBG
they're trying
move,
to like transition to be a little bit looser, because I mean they've been a pretty structured team for like 2 years now, and it could just be that we need something radically different because we're not, you know, as we've kind of said throughout the seasons, we're not a team that, you know, takes wins constantly over, you know, party astronauts, over Triumph, over
right.
You know, over Whalers, over teams like that in the past, that like they've always sort of been like the second tier down, more like with the secret clubs of the world than up with like the party astronauts of the world.
So maybe this is like their key to try and unlock that extra step from this roster.
Like we have the brains, we have the firepower, we just need like we need to clear up like attitude problems, and we just need to get someone who's like, who can like keep us like mentally, because it does sound like they kind of acknowledge they stagnated a bit because of like personality mesh problems. So maybe they do just need someone who can like, you know, who can push through the personality issues, have everyone be on the same page, and then like kind of get like the team mentality a little bit in more of a positive space.
Well, let's hope so. Well, I mean, alongside that, with Jitter kind of, you know, leaving from Secret Club, then Secret Club goes boom. Now this is kind of from, it's not quite that. It's a little bit due to the ESL rulebook, is my understanding so far. I feel bad for Hate in this situation because I had talked to him at Denver Frag, and he was really hoping to kind of put this roster together, but in the end they just didn't have enough roster moves in the end, and Secret Club go FF, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of it's sort of what I expected when I saw that ESL had put this rulebook in, just based on the way that a lot of teams make changes early into the season or in the off season in general. it's almost to be expected that there will be a team in North America that always disbands at the start of a season at this point, just because of this rulebook change. I'd obviously prefer not to see it, but just with the way rosters tend to dissolve, especially in the last couple of seasons, I feel like we will probably continue seeing something like this occur.
I mean, isn't necessarily bad for the team to get our team disbandments front loaded to the point where we lose Secret Cup in week 1 instead of losing them in week 6 or weeks at right before playoffs, because I mean we kind of knew Secret Club was probably gonna die for a long time now, because ever since they lost 60 in Modem, their roster submission deadline was already passed. They lost 2 of their big stars. Even if the old ESEA roster rules were in effect, they probably would struggle to rebuild even then, because they kind of lost their key pieces that made an very exciting roster. Interesting side note with that though, something back to what we said about jitter. Like I said last week, how emergency transfers make absolutely no sense. Apparently that was an emergency transfer, and the admins did accept it, even though it was literally just, hey, we want to switch Clasia out. And they're yep, that's an emergency. And it's okay, I don't get it.
Yeah,
I mean, if they're changing the policy on how emergency transfers apply going forward and being a little more lenient with it, then it's not necessarily a bad thing, because there have been a lot of times in the past where emergency transfers have been denied, and it's genuinely been a condition that the team. Yeah, exactly. And so if they're applying that across the board, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just don't want it to be abused. And
it's just weird.
It is a weird random change to start looking at.
We don't like Clasia, and Clasia doesn't like us. Is this an emergency? And they're yeah, great. No, it's not actually an emergency. Come on now.
Yeah, and I do, the one issue I do have with this, I get, yes, it's better for them to die at the beginning of the season than at the end, but I had heard whispers, I had heard from Hate that he had a roster picked out and he just had to submit it, but he just didn't have enough moves.
Well, I mean, it was also mainly because it was after the roster submission deadline. Right. So I don't know if
and that sucks all around, right? That's just, I think that's a growing pain, right? I think that's just a growing pain from switching rule sets. We'll have to see if that really becomes a problem later on. Do I think that it's probably for the best for NA? Probably. Will we run into some issues with it because it's not perfect? Yes. So
I mean, I think the main upside is you kind of get rid of these weird revolving door teams like PDHM last season, where they end up playing with 10 players, and theoretically who you have on your ESEA roster doesn't matter anymore, because you can only register 5 players, 2 subs, and a coach. So you don't have situations like with Choco Check where they can just have 15 players pay up, and then oh, you thought this week you're gonna fight exotic Retchi Noserack, but this week actually you're playing Woohoo, Stamina, and Shrek, and you're what the fuck,
and introducing Ogre.
And Ogre,
which I'm convinced is still an alt account, by the way. All right.
He's not a real person. It's he follows me, and it's just
there's no chance.
Who are you, Ogre? You're not a real person.
Actually, no shot. All right. Well, we do
Absolutely
have
not.
some more groundbreaking news coming out from North America as of today, and that is Cynic to Party Astronauts. As we have recently learned, Viz has had to step down from Party Astronauts due to family issues. We don't have any more details from that. We're not going to push for any more details on that. And as a long-term replacement, Cynic is coming into Party Astronauts. So 1, this raises questions for Triumph. 2, this makes me do you think this is an upgrade for Party Astronauts?
Yes. I mean, hot damn! If you need to get an emergency player on a short notice, getting Cynic is pretty fucking good.
It is kind of a banger move, honestly. In terms of just a 1-for-1 replacement, I think Cynic will be able to just make up for the loss of his, after given some practice time, obviously. But RIP Triumph ?
Oh man, it's looking rough. So one thing I think that's interesting he mentioned when I talked to him is that he said that his goals for how he wanted to play the game don't match up with what Triumph want to do. and it seems like Triumph are kind of going to be more like Pug Stars moving forward, and just like, you know, be a casual, semi-professional team where Cynic wants to actually become like a pro player.
Hey,
Which
wait,
kind
who
of
joined
explains
Triumph recently who might have an influence
what
on
player
that
would have
play
joined
style.
recently that could suggest to you that they wouldn't want to be a full-time professional. No, can you answer the question?
I declined to comment based on my Canadian charter rights.
Nice.
Damn it.
No out for you, Jeff. For myself. Well, but yeah, we'll see what happens at Triumph here, but I think for party astronauts, that'll be banging. Do you think the question is, will that elevate this core, or will it kind of still kind of simmer on the same level? You know, like
Party astronauts?
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So I think we're gonna see like Cynic go like sicko mode and be just completely unleashed this season.
Cynic
because I did
mode.
talk to him and he's not calling anymore.
Yep.
He's just gonna leave Benleet to call. So Benleet can like carry the baggage of calling for Cynic, and Cynic can just like go and like click heads. Like it's gonna be like delicious. It's gonna be like scrumptious because it's gonna be like back when he was like under Shake Zula's tutelage and like.
That's spicy. I'm excited. All right.
Because I mean that team. Think about how much firepower that team is. It
Yeah,
has
true.
Ponalone, who's like literally the best opper in NA Premier. It has Infinite, who's like a star class like tier 2 player. It has Cynic, and then it has oh Jesus.
DJ?
There, DJ, who I think is a very underrated, like not like a star rifler, but just like a more like support, like middle. You know, he carries his weight in a server, but he probably doesn't have a lot of space. And he probably doesn't have a lot of space in this team anymore with like 3-star players. And then Bentley doesn't really need to do a whole lot because he has like 3 players who he can just kind of play around with and send out to do like strike team missions for him. You know.
Yeah, that honestly, it should be exciting. Just as long as they don't pull like a, as long as they don't kind of pull like a complexity with like the role, with the star player issue. Like I think that this will be pretty entertaining to watch. So I'm pretty excited for it. Anything else on that?
What about Triumph? Like, what do we see? Okay, well, so actually one thing. So presumptively, you would say that the addition of Cynic is an emergency transfer. But does that mean Triumph get an emergency transfer a new player because of the emergency transfer?
I mean, surely if you're going to grant it one way and a team loses a player like that, you have to grant it the other way.
Who do they even get at this point? Like, I'm just kind of like Rec because he played with 60 maybe, 8 because he played with 60.
I mean, either or, a good show.
Is that interesting? You have hate call for Triumph.
That'd be interesting. I think can give that a little bit of merit. Yeah.
You had Rec and you just don't call.
You just exist.
You just say, hey,
just
say,
go
shoot,
kill. Go kill. Yeah.
Play FPL. Play FPL in Premier. Don't worry about it.
Oh man.
How do you guys think the changes will affect the groups? Do you think it'll change anything at all?
Ooh.
Well,
assuming that Triumph get a new player, obviously.
Well, for Party Astronauts, they kind of end like in the same place because it's a very heavy group. I mean, for Triumph, like it could literally mean anything for Triumph because like Triumph could either like be at the same
misses
level.
Playoffs off of that.
You think so?
Yeah, off that move, I think they miss playoffs.
Who do you put up if they're gonna go down?
I would put up. Hold on, pulling up groups. Give me a second because my brain is fried. I would put. Where the heck are they? Honestly, I might give it to Eros or something. Because like
I need to see Eros play more because like they've played like 2 matches.
Yeah, but against Extra Salt, they put up was it 20 rounds?
Which like isn't bad, but it's also online CS, and I think they did play Inferno, so it's kind of like.
Well, yeah, it was Inferno and Overpass, so like they played really well. I got to catch some of that game before tonight, and I'm actually pretty impressed. I think we'll have to wait and see, but I don't think that Triumph is going to do well, especially against like the advanced competition. I mean, while Vera might be getting completely kind of trashed on right now, I feel like some of these other advanced teams, former advanced teams, coming up are actually doing pretty well. So we have yet to see. I mean, Eros did 2-1 third impact too. So.
And I think that kind of covers like most of what we want to talk about in terms of results this week. I mean, the only outlier for me with like what time we have left is I mean, One Tap just like literally shit on Big Chillin'. Like,
yeah, that kind of confirms my fears with Big Chillin', pretty much,
I think One Top's just a really good team.
That too.
I think they have
One Top's
do
a good
KJ.
team. Do you guys want to bring back an old tradition to end the show with match to catch, match to miss? Let's go for next week, so 31st, first and second.
It's gotta be Extra Salt versus RGB.
No, it's gotta
RBG,
be.
I mean.
It's gotta be Pain Gaming versus Party Astronauts.
Wait, that's not even on the HLTV schedule.
It's
Someone's
on the
slacking.
It's literally the A stream on September 1st.
Oh, then it's most definitely that game. For sure.
Yeah, I'd have to say. Yeah.
And what's our match to miss, fellas?
Match to miss. Hold on.
I gotta take a peek at this.
Oh, I lost where
Putting this question out there without sending the doc.
Yeah, what the heck, man?
Kind of screwed up though.
What the heck, man?
Do you need the doc link?
Yes, please. I don't have the server up right now. There we go.
No, I refuse to end the show.
Oh,
You don't tell me what to
Jeff.
do.
Come on, man. All right. What was this? What was this? This was
31st for a second. So our
Okay.
match to catch is Pain versus Party Astronauts. What match are we not going to be watching this week?
Recon 5 versus Choco Check.
Yeah, or I mean that's fair fox, but what about
I missed
GGPR
that.
versus Verum?
Yeah, that one.
VR versus Virum.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that'll give us that'll tell us, because Virum's already been kind of slapped down by a bunch of teams. That'll kind of tell us if GDPR is worth anything. I mean,
Well, if Verum get just bullied against GGPR, I think that's kind of pack it in for them, because that means against one of the, let's call it the lower tier playoff squads. If you're just getting dumpstered, I don't really know if that means you have what it takes to hang in Premier.
yeah, I guess we'll see.
Because I mean, if you're the only teams you can beat in Premier are other relegation teams, then you're just big chilling in season 37, and you're gonna go to relegation regardless. So it's what's the point,
Honestly, my match to miss would be Triumph versus Coldest Riders.
Reasonable.
I don't really want to see a team. I mean, the chances are that's probably going to be postponed, given that they only have 4 players. But I'm not interested in
Perhaps.
watching a brand new roster play
Whoa,
against
another
a
wild
move
card? What?
So.
I couldn't imagine wild cards being used in North America. What? All right. Well,
I choose to wild card this. It's your first match. Yes, wild cards.
I mean, we literally had a whole day that got wild carded. I think that was literally this week. So,
Yeah.
well, before we
Unlimited
wrap,
wild cards.
couple things I quickly wanted to mention. Third Impact won Frag Denver. Congrats to them. SpongeBob Popsicles Forever should have won. Smh. And then just one thing I wanted to put out there too is that Winners League does have their Alpha Series coming up, which is a $6,000 event in NA. Qualifier 1's on September 2nd. Each of the 2 teams that get qualified from that get $750. So there's actually some incentive there. And the second qualifier is on September 9th. Same thing. Both 2 teams that get qualified, $750, and the final events for $3,000. That's September 16th through the 17th, and I believe that one's going to be 4 invite teams and 4 teams that are from the 4 teams that qualify. So, well, with that,
That's a lot of info. Thanks for sharing.
yep, we spit that one out real quick. So
Put that on 0.5 speed and just get your pencil out.
Go back and write that one down. All right, everybody.
Be there or be square. It's probably gonna be free money when 2 advanced squads sign up.
Oh man, please no. All right, well, everybody, thank you for watching another episode of the Max Run 30 podcast, or listening, or shitting, whatever you're doing while you watch or listen to
Driving,
this podcast.
working,
Don't drive and watch. The usual. All right. Well,
DMing.
DMing.
if you're sluggy. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Peace.